Mr.Falcon!
さあ始まるアニバーサリー覚えて歌えスーパー戦隊
Alright, the time has finally arrived for me to complete my introductions to the big three of Tokusatsu with an introduction to Super Sentai. Now, Super Sentai is in a rather interesting spot regarding making an introduction to, as unlike Kamen Rider or Ultraman, even if you don't know that much about Super Sentai, in a sense you might be more familiar with it than you'd think, due to the series' just as popular and influential adaptation in Power Rangers. And yes, if you're one of the very few people out there that still don't know yet, Power Rangers is a wild adaptation / original creation using suits and footage from various Super Sentai series. And while Power Ranger seasons can differ from their Sentai counterparts, the overall concept of both franchises is more or less the same. A team of colorful superheroes fight some sort of evil empire set on taking over the world. However, with Tokusatsu becoming much more popular as well as accessible to those outside of Japan, and popular media over the years really obsessing over superhero teams, to which the Sentai franchise has been giving us new ones on a yearly basis since the 70s, it's definitely about time for the franchise to get the spotlight it so rightfully deserves. In this introduction video, I'm going to be going over a brief history of the Super Sentai franchise, along with getting into its legacy, appeal, and then to get into some recommendations on where to start. Now, the history of Sentai is quite vast when considering all the parties involved that helped mold it into the franchise we know today. Starting off, while taking a while to be considered the first Sentai series due to the franchise in the beginning trying to figure itself out, in 1975 we had Himitsu Sentai Go Ranger, which was another collaboration between Toei and the legendary Shotaro Ishinomori, the creator of Kamen Rider and various other iconic superhero and sci-fi series both in the realm of manga and tokusatsu. And while Go Ranger was a success, the follow-up series in 1977, Jaka, unfortunately wasn't so lucky, leading it to get cut short and was the last Sentai series Ishinomori worked on, and after that Sentai took a little bit of a break. However, around that time Toei was working with Marvel Comics, who during the 70s was trying to break into the Japanese market, which was proving to be a little bit more difficult than they thought, as translated comics and manga adaptations of their series just wasn't working as well as they hoped. With manga not working, Marvel decided to head into the realm of Tokusatsu with Toei, who they signed a 3-year contract with. For their first joint effort, Marvel brought in one of their most beloved characters, introducing the world to 1978's Spider-Man Tokusatsu. Now, Toei's Spider-Man isn't your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, but rather the emissary of Hell Spider-Man, who rides around in motorcycles and has a giant robot known as the Leopardon. Now, a lot of people tend to question why there's a giant robot in a Spider-Man show when learning about the Toei Spider-Man series. And that's really because Toei suggested a giant robot for the show, as giant robots were the big thing at the time, and would allow for greater toy sales. Which was a good move, as the Toei Spider-Man series did well. After Spider-Man in 1979, we got Battle Fever J, which became the first Sentai series to be titled as such, originally being a series for the Japanese equivalent of Captain America. Battle Fever J also introduced one of the most iconic elements of Sentai, the giant robot, thanks to the success of the Spider-Man series. As the franchise continued, more staples of Sentai were formed, like special team finisher weapons, power-ups, as well as bonus heroes that would appear later into the season to help out the main team and spice up the team dynamic. After Battle Fever J, Marvel worked on 2 more Sentai series, being Denziman and Sun Vulcan, before their contract eventually ended. Marvel, and more so Stan Lee, loved Toei's adaptation of Spider-Man, as well as the Sentai shows they worked on, and did think about bringing them over for a Western audience by dubbing them into English. Unfortunately, no Western broadcaster at the time wanted to do so. Only for years later, a certain man by the name of Haim Saban coming across Sentai on TV during a trip to Japan, and after liking it so much, he decided to adapt it to the West himself, leading to the debut of 1993's Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. A fusion of Sentai footage from Kyoryu Sentai, creating a wild hybrid of a show that exploded into popularity in the 90s. However, even before Power Rangers, Super Sentai saw some international success in regions like various parts of Latin America, Europe, Southeast Asia, as well as Korea. Korea, which also uses the Power Ranger name for the franchise, straight up made a sequel series for one of their more popular seasons, that being Dino Force Brave. While Sentai has seen a lot of success over the years, it's also faced its challenges. Various points throughout its ongoing run, the franchise has gone through strings of unsuccessful shows and low sales. However, much like the Sentai teams themselves, the franchise just kept charging forward, which is pretty insane as a lot of its Toku franchise contemporaries would either go on hiatuses or even straight up end, but Sentai just kept chugging along. I feel like as long as I've been a part of the Tokusatsu community, I've seen every year people sort of doomsaying the franchise, saying that the next Sentai series is going to be the last, or sales are at an all-time low, or whatever, only for Sentai to just keep going. And while yes, sales have been a problem for Sentai over the years, and like any long-running franchise, fans on the internet are always going to have something to say and complain over, but I feel this situation for Sentai has at least allowed for some interesting concepts to be developed, like having a Sentai series with a total of 12 Rangers, or having two different Sentai teams both fight against and team up with each other for a whole season, and even most recently have a team that mostly consists of robot characters, on top of being a super huge anniversary season. While I'm unsure how long this franchise will continue on without taking some sort of break or even wrapping up, it's safe to say that no matter what, Sentai won't go down without a fight. Now, the big three of Tokusatsu are very influential in pop culture as we've seen throughout these introduction videos. Though personally I feel, at least to someone who's not in the know, seeing the legacy of Kamen Rider and Ultraman might be a bit harder to see at first, but with Sentai, yeah, it's pretty apparent. Chances are if you consumed enough anime and manga, or heck even cartoons and comics, you've come across your fair share of Sentai references or parodies. And while many are very obvious, some do catch you off guard, like that one scene in Girls in Panzer where they're straight up doing Die Ranger poses. I saw Panzer way before seeing Die Ranger, so I was pretty shocked when I saw the original team pose. And that's not mentioning entire parody shows based off Sentai, like Kanpai Senshi and Tentai Senshi Sunred, which is a favorite of mine and you should totally watch. Of course, beyond references and parody, you also have the huge impact of the Power Ranger franchise, which has a whole legacy of its own to almost match Sentai's itself, which is pretty wild to think. For many like myself, Power Rangers, even if we didn't know it at the time, was our first taste of Tokusatsu, and I would say played a pretty big role in building the Western Tokusatsu fanbase. Of course, with Power Rangers being as big as it was back then, there were a lot of other shows that tried doing the same thing, leading to more wild adaptation hybrids like VR Troopers, Big Bad Beetleborgs, Superhuman Samurai Cyber Squad, as well as original Western Toku creations like Mystic Knights, tattooed teenage alien fighters from Beverly Hills, and Los Luchadores. Not only did Sentai birth a new franchise for its Western audience, the series also has a sort of sister franchise in Precure, a long line of Magical Girl anime that's been ongoing since 2004, with each new Precure season airing pretty closely to the new Sentai season. Precure is pretty much Magical Girl Sentai, and has done amazingly well in Japan while also interweaving itself with the Toku community, as chances are eventually in your journey through the Tokusatsu rabbit hole, you'll eventually come across some Precure. which I guess isn't too much of a stretch to begin with, as magical girls are essentially colorful transforming superheroes, just with a bit more sparkles in their explosions. Now there is a lot to get into with the appeal of Super Sentai. First up, much like its big bro Kamen Rider, Super Sentai seasons all have their own unique gimmicks and themes to spice up each season. These themes can range anywhere from spies, ninjas, samurais, pirates, cops and robbers, dinosaurs, and a whole bunch more. Some of these themes do get repeated, but usually add something a bit special to mix them up from previous seasons of a similar nature, which I honestly gotta give massive respect to the franchise for. As like I mentioned earlier, this franchise has been going on non-stop for 40 plus years. And despite the occasional repeat of certain themes, the franchise has still managed to truly create something new for each season, which is incredible. Speaking of new things being made for each Sentai season, one of the more popular elements of Super Sentai is of course the giant robots. And hey, who doesn't love giant robots? Thanks to the mecha, Sentai sort of has the best of both worlds in tokusatsu action, as not only do we have fun on the ground battles, but we also have fun giant robot battles in almost every episode. We've seen a lot of great and not so great mechs throughout Sentai's long run, a good chunk of which see their own upgrades during the course of their respective season, growing stronger alongside their teams. Some series even give the mechs a bit of a personality, which is fun as it helps them feel more like a part of the team rather than completely as a tool. Which brings us to the greatest appeal of Super Sentai, which is the actual Sentai or squadron aspect of the franchise. You see, you can have a Kamen Rider show with barely any masked riding and still have a great season. But a Super Sentai show without a super squad of fun characters, well, that just wouldn't work out. The team aspect of Sentai is the true heart of it all. The best Sentai series are the ones where we see a group of fun characters form a team that is able to support and grow alongside each other, both as comrades and individuals. While the team aspect of Sentai could lead to a lot of great interactions and development for its characters and story, it also really shines through in the action department. As with a big team of superheroes, Sentai generally requires much more choreography and tactics put into their fight scenes, with almost every episode featuring large battles of multiple heroes fighting waves of minor enemies, and coming up with strategies to take down the main monster of the episode together. Each member usually has their own unique fighting style, powers, and weapons, alongside team attacks and special team weapons and power-ups, and that's still not mentioning the giant robot battles to round off almost every episode, making Sentai definitely the most varied of the big three of tokusatsu in terms of action. Also, you just gotta love all of the good dramatic team poses, as those will never get old. And now we've reached the recommendation portion of this introduction video. Keep in mind, I haven't seen every Sentai series. As of this video, there's like 45 of them, but I have at least seen 10. I'll give a short personal list of series that I really enjoyed, and I'm sure many people in the comment section will go down and list off their own recommendations as well. But before I get into my personal list of recommendations, considering so many have grown up with Power Rangers, I honestly feel like starting off with the Sentai series that was adapted for your favorite Power Ranger season might be a really great way to get into the Super Sentai franchise, as you would already have a level of familiarity of what you've seen before, but now in its original context. But getting into my personal recommendations, I'll go through 4 series that I really enjoy. First up, we have the first Ninja Sentai, Kaku Ranger, which was also what Power Rangers Alien Rangers was based on. It's a really fun and wild season that may start off pretty wacky, but eventually comes around and delivers a lot of tense and surprising moments, while being fun all the way through. Also, it's got Jiraiya, the American Cowboy Ninja. Then there's Jetman, a fan favorite that many heavily advertise as being the darkest season ever. And while yes, there are some pretty intense scenes every now and then, I don't think it's that big of a deal considering what even older Sentai series were doing back in the day. Still, Jetman is great, with it being a much more dramatic series, with all kinds of tragedies and love triangles on both the heroes and villains. Also, if you're an old school anime fan, you'd be pleased to know Jetman takes heavy inspiration from the Gatchaman series. Then there's Geki Ranger, the original form of Power Rangers Jungle Fury. That is just a fantastic martial arts themed Sentai series with great suits as well as melee. Finally, on my personal recommendations, there is Kira Major, a newer Sentai season, with it being the Sentai of 2020, and I really wound up loving it. It has everything that to me personally makes a great Sentai. Cool costumes, an extremely lovable cast that all get their own time to truly shine, a great focus and passion for fun, creativity, and overall positivity. It's just really good and quite honestly was a highlight for me in 2020. And there's still so much great Sentai out there for you to enjoy. The current season as of this video, Zenkaiger, has been great. And with it being an anniversary series, it might even help more for a newcomer to get a feel for previous seasons. And that's not even mentioning the previous big anniversary series in Gokaiger, which I know a lot of other people recommend. At the end of the day, Sentai has been around for a while and there's a lot to pick and choose from, so just go with what you find interesting. While not to the extent of availability as Ultraman these days, there's at least some legal methods in checking out Sentai. Thanks to Shout Factory, who've made a handful of Sentai series available both physically and digitally, which I'll link down in the description below. But with that, I have completed my introductions to the big three of Toku. I still want to do an introduction to Garo, but I might take a break from Tokusatsu introductions for a while and focus more on anime and manga series for the next one. I'm still split on either doing it for Kinnikuman or Lupin the Third, but maybe tell me in the comments which one you'd prefer to see first. That being said, if you're a Sentai fan or completely new to Sentai, I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you are new to Sentai, I really hope this helped you start off your journey with this fantastic franchise. If you're interested in getting to know other Tokusatsu franchises, I've also done introductions to Kamen Rider, Ultraman, and the Metal Heroes. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoy my content and want to support me, you can do so by checking out either my Patreon or Ko-fi. I'd really appreciate it. Also, special thanks to my current patrons. As always, I'm Mr. FalconPunch. Stay safe, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.